take one of Nate trying to voice act on the spot. Stop me if you heard this one before. Okay, dude, this is not Family Feud. Why did you interrupt me in the beginning of my personal speech? Honestly, I just forgot what my idea was going to be just by that skit. Have you ever heard of such tomfoolery? But I was going to say something along the lines of, have you ever heard the phrase, keep politics out of my comic books, or comics used to be about escapism, or comics were never political in the first place until recently, where writers were trying to force their beliefs onto others. And yes, while this is all fine and dandy of a mindset to have, we're all entitled to our own opinion, it just tells me that you were never a fan of these characters to begin with, and you're more likely than anybody else to completely misunderstand and mischaracterize them than those who want more politics in their comics. But this begs the question, were they ever not political? Spoiler alert, no, like not even a little bit. Comic books have always been political. But the interesting part isn't that they are political, it's how they're political. That is what matters. If you want the most obvious political roots in comic history, look no further than the X-Men. Their entire mythos is surrounded under the umbrella of something called the mutant metaphor, which I will talk about, or I have talked about, in a video you'll see in your top right corner. I talk about the pitfalls of trying to write politics and relating it to the real world and making it fight against each other. I know it sounds a bit weird without context, but I promise you it will make more sense once you click on the video. However, intentionally, the X-Men were seen as a commentary on discrimination, on civil rights, on marginalized identities, of state violence, and even the fear of the quote-unquote other, whatever the other may be. And to do a little bit of a side tangent, if you care what another person is doing, this is why I never understood discrimination based on like homophobia. If you care about that so much, I'm gonna be honest, it makes you more gay than they are. Why do you care what another person is doing instead of caring about yourself? The only reason why I could see somebody getting angry is if you interact with somebody who makes it their entire personality and they just keep throwing it in your face and they're not even a normal human being. They are a caricature of what a gay person should be. If that is what you're seeing and you get angry at that, sure, but don't do anything hateful. Why would you waste your time with that? You seem like the lesser person. Either way, Professor X and Magneto, these two characters, what makes them special from a political standpoint and the X-Men as a whole is that they represent two ideological approaches to oppression. And the X-Men stories themselves weren't hiding anything under the surface. They were beating you over the head with it. And honestly, I will agree, sometimes subtlety is indeed for cowards. Just say it with your chest. That was the approach that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby had. They were speaking about issues America did not want to confront, and they've been doing it since the 1960s, long before the modern audiences began arguing about wokeness or the agendas or any type of keywords or buzzwords that grifters like to throw online. The reason these stories resonate is because the comic book medium evolves with the times. Heroes are used, or they should be used, as tools to examine the culture, especially since you see these characters, these larger-than-life characters, interact with heightened versions of our own reality. If you go into the DC or Marvel or Image universes, you'll be able to find New York, you'll be able to find San Francisco, you'll be able to find Japan. So in actuality, when people analyze the X-Men, they're really analyzing human society. But going further back in time, because we have a lot to cover and we have to beat arguments at every single ground, comics weren't the neutral entertainment that a lot of people like to claim. They were political messaging wrapped in superhero tights. There was a bunch of colorful panels that distracted people of what was going on under the surface. Before superheroes were the billion-dollar franchises, they were used for war bonds, anti-Nazi propaganda, and frankly, actually, when I'm thinking about it, government morale boosters. Captain America, for example, the biggest example there is, punched Adolf Hitler on the cover of Captain America #1, months, mind you, before the United States officially entered World War II. Superman went after the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, the Triple K, in a radio show, and that later influenced the comics itself. Comics that are actually very influential and a good way to look at Superman and analyze his character. Read Superman Smashes the Klan. It's a very quick read, it gets to the heart of Superman, and it understands the immigrant experience and reflects that onto Kal-El himself. on top of having a very webcomic-y, cartoon anime art style that is very pleasing to the eyes. Wonder Woman was created by a feminist. Why? To promote messages of equality and women empowerment, duh. Even the earliest stories of Batman dealt with corruption and the failures of the justice system. This wasn't subtle, it wasn't apolitical. It was the culture of the time, the power of expressing your politics through modern mythology, and like every other form of art, comics also reflected the ugliness of that era. That's the point, to capture that politics, good and bad. Wartime propaganda, racist caricatures, nationalist biases. But again, that doesn't make them apolitical. It makes it an artifact of its time. They are time capsules of public values. But this brings us to the real philosophical question. Do people honestly believe art is not political? Every piece of art, every story, every comic, every character you're making me rap is shaped by someone's values, experiences, ethics, and worldview. Even if the story avoids any explicit political statements, themes, character decisions, or like conflicts that might carry some sort of political meaning, a single line from a character or a subtle narrative beat can raise a lot of meaningful questions for the audience. Art itself can't be separated from politics because humans can't be separated from politics. Are you a blank slate? Is there nothing going on in your head? Do you have no opinions of your own? If that's the case, then art can be apolitical, but I'm willing to bet you're not. We create stories based on what we know, what we fear, and the dreams that we have. Whether it's intentional or not, art itself reflects its creators and the world that shaped them, right? If you have any trauma or pain or some bad experience, you're gonna find a way to use it as fuel for your story, for the narrative you're trying to tell. Any story about identity, about responsibility, about power or justice or corruption is used to explore political ideas. You cannot escape politics in art, so that means you can't escape it in superhero stories, for better and for worse. Obviously, there is a downside to this sometimes, depending on what the opinions they're trying to get across, but in general, this is just in the lifeblood, the DNA of the superhero storytelling structure. Superhero stories, particularly like the grounded ones, I think, are more inherently political because they revolve around a very simple but also a kind of powerful idea. It's that the system itself is necessary, but it's also flawed, right? And the cracks in that system can only be filled by vigilantes. The very existence of vigilantes actually poses a very interesting political question. It's like they challenge authority by operating outside of it, forcing a lot of us to realize the failures, if we're going to look at the real world, of our own institutions that should be there to protect us. When Batman or Daredevil or Spider-Man or, I don't know, Green Arrow, one of the better political characters there is, they're doing so when they take to the streets because the system did not prevent the harm that they encountered in their origin story. Something happened to them that could have been prevented, but it didn't. These stories often highlight corrupt cops, cover-ups, judges who protect the powerful, and political figures who are driven by agendas, and they're all in the pocket of somebody, right? And it leads to personal indulgence of looking the other way and pretending that nothing bad happened to create the illusion of control, because if nobody knows about it and you cover it up, then it seems like they're doing a very good job. Superheroes, they work in these spaces where the institutions fail because they're honest, they'll shed light on corruption, they aren't tied to anybody politically or financially, and they will often take the blame for their own mistakes and they will realize their shortcomings, and this creates better trust with the people that they're protecting. Their mere existence, along with their goals of challenging authority when it goes unchecked, is enough to get a lot of people on their side. And it also begs the question, if the police fails, who polices the police, because they need to be held morally responsible, and these vigilantes will root out any corrupted pieces, as they should. Now, this is where I get to my cherry-picking segment, because I'm going to take characters from two different extremes and talk about how they are political. The first one is the Man of Steel himself, Superman. So Superman in his relationship with politics is even more direct because he is a symbol of goodness and hope in a world that often rejects that, right? Superman wants to help everyone, but every attempt he makes to fix the world's problems places him in direct conflict with political systems that fear his influence. Every time he tries to feed the hungry or give those in poverty a place to stay or trying to cut down on global warming, he's always directly confronted with political systems that fear his influence. Government debates over whether he should be controlled, if he should be nation-sanctioned. Many states actually worry about his ability to disrupt their balance of power because he is that domino effect that could do it. Thankfully for them, though, he realizes that it is not his place to influence them through the use of his power because they are all weaker than him, and he doesn't want to punch down. But sometimes he has to do that. Sometimes he has to get involved. Either way, though, institutions fear how much good he can do because it exposes their own failures or prevents them from having people that can work under their thumb. They want to keep them under their iron fist so that they are loyal and they can get done the labor that they want. However, Superman's stories became political precisely because he tries not to be. He's like, this is not my place, but every single time humanity does something crazy that makes him subtly or slightly give away a bit of his faith. He's like, come on guys, I know you're better than this, but they're not. His idealism collides with his human self-interest and the corruption of the world. Even when Superman is doing something as simple as saving a life, there are political ramifications there. It ripples outward. His existence alone challenges the structures of power. That's why his name is the symbol or the champion of the oppressed, because it is his goal to tackle with these issues. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of political connotations when you talk about the oppressed. His stories cannot really avoid politics, even when he tries to avoid them personally. On the other side of the spectrum, we have a character like the Punisher. Some fans glorify him as a badass killing machine, nothing more and nothing less. Apolitical, masculine fantasy. But the Punisher's entire character is built on political questions. Frank Castle in his stories explore the failures of a mental health support system. He was a traumatized soldier that was brought home. He was already fractured, but then the mobs killed his family, his wife, and his kids. And from that point, he took justice in his own hands. And it shows us the ethics of Vigilantism and how he is in direct conflict with other characters like Daredevil and Spider-Man. And it also raises questions about the danger of inspiring extremists. Even in the comics, we see how Punisher and his logo inspires those, in particular the cops, to act and kind of worship him because he gets results. Punisher doesn't want that. Punisher doesn't want anybody to be exactly like him. He knows the road that he went down, and nobody else should be in the same lane. And there is what stems the moral conflict from a political angle. He is a walking critique of a system that created him because it failed to protect him and his family. What happens when somebody takes justice into their own hands and apply that to the real world? How scared would we be, or how grateful would we be if there was a person like Frank Castle in the real world? There are people who idolize him, and then there's people who hate him. What does that say about society? If you fully agree with Punisher and all of his philosophy, that reveals something about your politics. If you completely reject it, that also reveals something about you. If you read a Punisher comic or you watch the movie or the television shows, whenever you see the Punisher's actions, I want you to take a mental notes, right? And go through some of this media. However you react to what he does, it is a political mirror. It reflects on you as much as it does him. And that is what makes him so fascinating. And finally, I want to get to the heart of the issue from a modern lens. We've been going back in the past a lot, but in the modern day, what is the issue? In my opinion, it's the echo chamber. People today don't actually hate politics and comics. They hate politics that disagree with their own. If a message aligns with their own worldview, they don't notice it. It feels natural, it feels safe, it feels unthreatening. But if the same comic expresses a viewpoint that they don't like, suddenly it's woke propaganda, or it's an agenda. It goes both ways. Some readers will criticize it for not being progressive enough, Others will complain about it being too progressive. You see what inroads that we're getting at right now? It reached a point where fans think that every single character should reflect and believe their own opinions. Like what? Why? Or the story is ruined. But characters can and should have differing opinions, even harmful ones, right? If they're expressing a harmful ideology, it does not mean the writer themselves endorses it. Hell, they might not even agree with the politics of a character that they're writing, but so many people like to impart it onto the creators themselves, thinking that no, this is what they believe, this is what they want us to agree with. No, a flawed hero or even a normal hero believing something doesn't conflict with anything. It doesn't make the story bad. It makes me like scratch my brain thinking, is nuance disappearing because everything is forced into this black and white perspective when everybody should really just be interpreting it in gray? It's not that complicated. The entire point of fiction is to explore that complexity, not to eliminate it completely. That is why politics matters in comics. It's been around for nearly, if not a century. Don't you want media that means something, or do you just want empty entertainment slop that has no lasting impact? Even if you disagree with the politics, you don't need to hate on it, because for a certain group of people, it will stick with them forever. Generation after generation, the superhero genre itself was open to asking questions and to really analyze something about ourselves and even who we want to be. That's the floodgates that it opens up. Superheroes aren't just escapism from everyday life, it's escapism through politics because it shines a new filter on what this could be. When you place it within a fantasy setting, all these rules, all these entrenched laws that are spoken about in this form, then it gives you a safe space to form your own opinions through the magic of superhero comics, right? You're given all the tools you need to eventually create something of your own. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Is there anybody in your life who vehemently attacks the idea of superheroes being political? Because I want to know if I'm taking crazy pills, because I've never seen anyone like that in IRL. I think it's just a bunch of grifters online who pretend to be the majority. But either way, let me know your favorite political moments in comics and moments that actually shape the way that you view the world. Anyways guys, remember to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live. That's all from me. See you all later. Take care. Deuces. Peace.